It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is What Made the Cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
And, of course, this portion of the show brought to you by Trajan Wealth. For all your trusted local needs in retirement, it is TrajanWealth.com. JJ, this is somebody we've talked to multiple times. We love being able to talk to him. He knows this market well. He knows the market that he covers very well, too. Braiden Bell, part of the Arizona State Sun Devils broadcasting team, and he, of course, covers all sorts of things. But let's talk some Arizona State football while we're at it. Braiden, first, welcome to the program, man.
Yeah, hey, thanks, guys. Hell's Bells, I'm all for it. That's
okay.
was like my dream when I would play baseball, in high school and was nowhere near good enough to go pro. I'd be like, okay, if I was a closer, Hell's Bells absolutely had to be that.
Well, listen, it makes sense. Obviously, it fits, and it'll be from now on your new calling card anytime you come onto the program here. We had a heck of a time talking to Kenny Dillingham. I feel like everybody has a heck of a time talking to Kenny Dillingham anywhere at Big 12 Media Days. Love being able to jam with that guy. The energy is undeniable, and certainly being able to match that energy, because there's a lot of coaches who walk around with a lot of energy, but not a lot of them coming in year two of head coach. Was it year two? Was it just his second year as the head coach? Yeah. So after his second year, he wins the Big 12 championship, no problem. Goes to the college football playoff, no problem. Of course, he didn't want to talk about all that because he feels like they haven't done anything this year, of course, and he brought that attitude with his players. Let's talk a little bit about what the Valley has been like since last year, and ASU did get that Big 12 championship and a trip to the college football playoff.
Man, what a difference a year makes. I would say the thing about Coach Dillingham that's really neat, and you said it, the energy he brings, and while that isn't unique, it does, to me at least, being around him and also, just seeing other coaches, it does seem genuine. Like, it is a genuine, palpable energy, and I think that's a big reason why they had the success they had last year. The players really fed off of that energy and that belief that he was giving them, and obviously a big difference this year will be the chip that they had on their shoulder last year, being picked to finish dead last, this year being the defending champions and a team with their target on their back. I mean, that's a massive difference to kind of try to navigate moving forward. But in terms of the vibes down here, I would say that it's the most excited this area has been for a season of ASU football in at least a decade, if not 20 years. The fact that they had that great year and it was that Cinderella story really did kind of swell up support to a fever pitch. But the good thing about this team, at least in the fan base's eyes this year, is that you're bringing back 16 starters. So in a day and age where there's new faces all around in every program in college football, say what you will about that, you not only have a Cinderella story team coming back that took you to heights that no one in this area or really in the country thought they would hit, but then you bring back 16 players, including your best, offensive players, and Sam Levitt, the quarterback, Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver, and then defensively you're bringing back 10 of 11. So it really is a perfect scenario, I would say, in terms of keeping the energy from last year, but you're exactly right. Kenny Dillingham's really quick to pump the brakes on what you did last year, the excitement of playing Texas in the Peach Bowl and winning, 11 games when you were expected to win like 4 or 5. None of that matters now, and he's very quick to correct you on that.
No, Arizona State was one of the best stories in college football last season, and it was a phenomenal ride for them. But he is right. Everyone's going to ask, okay, now what? Can you do this back-to-back years? What are the things that give you reason to believe they can, and what are some of the concerns you may have this season that would cause them to not have as much success as they did last year?
Well, the first concern that I think everyone would jump on quickly is they don't have number 4 in the backfield, Cam Scattaboo, anymore. That guy was a human highlight reel. I mean, he was unbelievable. Probably should have been in New York as a Heisman finalist, but he obviously is gone now. So the immediate question is, who's your running back going to be? It's going to be a running back room by committee, especially at the beginning of the year. Kyson Brown, who was the backup last year, is certainly capable. Raleek Brown's a transfer from USC and didn't play a lot last year. His hamstring was messed up basically in the entire year, but he'll be back this year. And then they had a transfer from Army, which that's a great side note. Transferring from West Point to Tempe is certainly something. Kanye Udo, he'll be in the running back room as well. I would say the running back room's a question. I guess you could give a question at defensive line, a couple of new defensive linemen in there. But like I just said, guys, like there aren't very many holes in terms of question marks. Both coordinators are back. You've got 10 of 11 starters on defense. You've got, Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson, who might be the best quarterback and wide receiver duo in the country, let alone in the Big 12. So I would say, maybe the biggest question is the schedule. And that in itself is tough, especially on the road. Early on in Big 12 play, they open up at Baylor in the opener. They're supposed to be pretty good. Then you've got TCU on a short week back in Tempe, then a bye week. Then they'll play Utah, and then Texas Tech. Those are 4 games in a row, and I would say that most people would agree those 4 teams will be, in the top half of the conference at least. Although who knows in the Big 12 nowadays. But right. Baylor, TCU, Utah, Texas Tech, all expected to be good. So I would say the question marks would be, the schedule, navigating things on the road, the running back room, and then a little bit on the defensive line as well.
One thing, Braiden, that we were impressed with was, obviously Jordan Tyson comes back and they're able to kind of have that back and forth connection. But Sam Levitt was 16th last year on that list of preseason quarterback rankings, and of course finds himself number 1 this year because you go from 16-1 as a team, you go 16-1 as a quarterback. Honestly, other than people not understanding or knowing that Arizona State team as well as they thought they did, obviously, last year going into what they saw, what is Sam Levitt bring to that team, and what does he do as a player that could make him that number 1 quarterback in the league, despite the fact that he's going to be missing his sidekick, Cam Scadaboo? Yeah,
it's supreme confidence for Sam Levitt, and I don't know if the listeners or if you guys have seen some of the stories written about him over the offseason. One example is he keeps a list of every single quarterback that he has seen other people say is better than him in the country, right? It's not just in the Big 12. And that list has obviously shrunk quite a bit based on what he did last year. But, his goals, and he's very open and honest about this, and people may scoff and laugh at it, but his goal is to, be a Heisman finalist, win the Heisman, and be right there in the college football playoff again, going deeper this year. And, he says to win the national title. So, that extreme confidence, whether or not you think that's, realistic or not, he's got that, and he truly believes that. And I think that radiates into the rest of his offense and everyone around him. And then I would say in terms of things he does on the field, it is his ability to use his legs, right? He's got a great arm, but I think if you go back and you watch some of the big games last year, whether it was Texas in the Peach Bowl, Iowa State, definitely in the Big 12 title game, even the BYU game at times, especially when BYU was making that comeback late in the second half, he was able to escape the pocket, whether it was to gain a few yards with his legs or just extend a play and find someone open downfield. It's kind of that X factor that maybe you wouldn't expect from a guy like Sam Levitt, but he's very athletic, very slippery in the pocket, and I would say his legs might be his superpower.
Looking at the schedule, you mentioned it briefly before. I'm curious what you think that swing game is on that schedule that's going to tell us what we need to know about this team in 2025.
Well, I'm not just playing into it because I'm talking to you guys, but I think anytime you play in Salt Lake City at Rice Eccles, and I can tell you that nobody around here wants that to be a night game. So hopefully a nice, day game in mid-October, coming off of a bye. I think that's a game you obviously will circle. For me is that Utah game, just because that is kind of that mark that ASU had last year. They beat Utah, and say what you will, it wasn't a pretty game, and Utah's quarterback situation, all of that. But it was that game where I think just being around the program, they kind of gained that belief of, okay, we're a different team this year, just because of the physicality that Utah brings to the table and how much they have, frankly dominated ASU over the past couple of years leading into that game. So I think that Utah game is certainly one to look at. After that, Texas Tech, with what they did in the portal, of course, spending all the money that West Texas oil money can bring into the table. That's a big one that certainly people are excited about. So I would say, zooming in specifically on Utah, and you're coming off a bye there, but I believe Utah is as well into that game, and then Texas Tech that next week back here in the desert. I think those are two games that definitely will swing and decide how special this season really can be.
One of the things that we've been obviously watching is how well that ASU's adapted to the success that they've had. I think that they've handled it pretty well. I think that they're at least saying all the right things. What's going to be something that even the outsiders looking in would go, oh, that's a shock about about this team's, about this team right now. In my mind, we look at it and we go, Arizona State, we know what they can be, but they lost Cam Scadaboo, and that's like the end of it, right? And then they go, they got Sam Levitt, and they have Jordan Tyson, and that's kind of the end of it. But does it surprise people to know how good of a defense that Arizona State defense has become as well?
Absolutely. I think that's spot on. I mean, I know I keep bringing up that Texas game, right? But if you remember back to that game, in the first game of the day on New Year's Day, it was 14-0 Texas State. Ran a punt back for a touchdown, and then their opening drive offensively, they scored in like 3 plays. And it looked as though, oh boy, this is going to be a mismatch. Really bad news for the Big 12 and a tough ending to a magical season. But if you remember the rest of that game, it was the defense that allowed ASU, of course, to make that comeback. Of course, Cam Scadaboo was phenomenal. Sam Levitt made plays on offense, but it was the defense that was able to hold down Quinn Ewers and that high-powered Texas offense all the way through. It was the defense who was able to come up with an interception against BYU and Javen Robinson, who had that pick at the end of the game against the Cougars to starve off that comeback from BYU. So, you look back at many of those plays last year, and it was that side of the ball. And it might not get the headlines, but that is the reason why, to me, this is a team that certainly can be, either repeat champions or right there again at the top of the conference, because they do bring back so much on defense. And they've brought in a few transfers that should help in terms of depth on that side of the ball as well. So I think that's a phenomenal point that you made, and I think that it might get overlooked simply because of the star power on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense is going to determine just how great this team can be. I think the offense, people know it's dangerous. People know they'll put up points. People know the numbers will be there. But if the defense can have a similar year or even better than what they did last season, that will determine for me just how high they can finish up.
That BYU-Arizona State game last year was a lot of fun, and it felt like it was more than just a game. It felt like there was a lot of stuff boiling under the surface in that game, and it came all out at the end with that wild finish and fans spilling on the field. BYU fans and BYU themselves really wanted a rematch. Does Arizona State feel the same, and how much of a shame is it we're not going to see that game unless it's in the championship game?
It's so disappointing we're not going to see that game. And you're exactly right. Just being there, it was much more than a game. It certainly feels as though that is the next, 1B or maybe number 2 behind Arizona on the rivalry list, and it certainly can be that way for Arizona State moving forward. BYU has a great following here in the Valley. So there was a ton of blue in the stands that day, and it was a picture-perfect day, and just the way the game played out, a 21-0 lead for ASU. BYU comes all the way back. It looks like they're going to win the game at the very end. And then, of course, the 2 field stormings and Kenny Dillingham exploding on the officials when the review was going down. Those are all the moments we remember. But, yeah, I would say, if I'm going to be honest with you, Arizona State was perfectly okay getting Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. I don't think there were many complaints about that whatsoever. It was a good matchup. It was a fresh matchup. You weren't going to have the revenge factor for BYU coming in there. It would have been a lot of fun for that rematch, and as a football fan, I would have loved it. But I think moving forward, it is a travesty. And I know these things are determined years out, but gosh, that's one of those games that I hope we can get on the schedule year in and year out, whether it's those 4 corner schools, Utah, Colorado, and Arizona, obviously getting them on the schedule every year. I think that's something that certainly needs to happen, not only because they're closer travel-wise, but like you said, that is the kind of matchup that can kind of bring that fun back into a rivalry matchup that isn't Utah if you're BYU. I think that's something that has to happen moving forward.
What's going to be the thing that makes it to where Arizona State may fall short of the expectations now after that championship year last year? What could be the things that get in the way of having another good season this year?
Well, the first one I would say, and this is, it could apply for every single team in the country, is health, right? I think that's an obvious one. It's a team that, while there is a great number of returners, I would say that, if you have a big-time injury to one of those big names I've already discussed, that certainly would lead to a different look on the season. But then I would say things kind of go back to the offensive line. I know we talked defensive line earlier. The offensive line certainly does have, 4 returning starters, and that is a big-time deal. But I would say that that is something that can be looked at. And then the last thing, too, and I know that, you pointed it out, they're saying the right things, and it seems as though Coach Dillingham certainly is not allowing, this squad to kind of sit on their high horse after they did last year. But there is a certain aspect to moving from the hunted or to the hunter to the hunted, I should say. So that is going to be a thing. That is now a game that people are going to circle when Arizona State comes to town. Even, in week 2 of the season, they play Mississippi State. And while Mississippi State is not a premier SEC school, you're still going down to Starkville. And that's going to be a game that they were in the college football playoff last year. That's a game people are going to be excited about. So can you handle that? Can you handle being the draw? Can you handle being the team with the target on your back? Who knows, right? It's something that nobody on this team has dealt with before. Nobody on this coaching staff has really dealt with before at ASU at least. So I would say, can you put those things aside? Can you use that as a positive? If not, of course, that could draw you back down as well.
Well, we described some of our anger at the BYU Arizona State game not being played, but we're excited about Utah and Arizona State being able to face off against one another in Salt Lake City this year. And it's always good to have these 4 corner schools all competing. But Braiden, we're going to dip in again, of course, when that game gets a little bit closer and anything Arizona State related. We're going to cheat off of your test. So thanks for hanging out with us, man.
I love it. Thanks, guys. And yeah, Hell's Bells next time. I'll be ready to jump in.
Let's do it.
It's done.
Can't wait.
Thanks, Braiden.
There you go. Braiden Bell, everybody.